Hi guys, my name is Mariana and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. So in the month of June, I read 43 books. I have, for no ratings, I have 2 no ratings. I have 0 1-stars. I never really give 1-stars. I have 2 2-stars, 23 stars, 16 4-stars, and 3 5-stars. So overall, I pretty much had a good reading month. Like, I got a lot of favorites and I have a lot of books that I can't wait to talk about with you guys. Some books I am going to go into more details with others just because some are like part of a series or I just didn't really like that much and I want to spend more time talking about books that I like. So if you want to check out my full review of it, I always leave a review on my Goodreads. So, and if you guys have seen my wrap-ups before, then you know that I split my videos into categories. So we're gonna start off with YA Contemporary, and for the first YA Contemporary book that I read, I have Ace of Spades, was a 5-star read, of course. So if you don't know what Ace of Spades is, where have you been? If you haven't read it, why? Ace of Spades is a dark academia book. It is Get Out meets Gossip Girl, and this has been one of the truest to its comparisons I've read all month. Personally, I'm kind of like annoyed that like a lot of black books are getting compared to Get Out, but I don't mind them. It's not going to stop me. I just wish that like Get Out wasn't the only thing that they can compare black books to, but I understand, and it's not going to stop me from reading it. And this was one of the most Get Out like comparisons I've had. This and When No One Is Watching are like the most true to its comparison that I've read so far. So this book follows Chiamaka and Devon, and they go to an all-white school. They're the only 2 black kids that go in the entire school, and suddenly they start to get targeted for, they both get exposed for things, and they are the only 2 out of all their students that are getting targeted. And there are 2 different sides of the spectrum. Also, the book starts off with Devon becoming head boy. No, he doesn't become head boy. He becomes like prefect. I'm sorry, I'm thinking prefect, but I think that's Harry Potter. But basically like one of those. Chiamaka's head girl, and she's like Blair Waldorf, like the Black Blair Waldorf. I love Chiamaka and I love Devon. I just love these characters. And this book is also queer. He's in a male-male relationship and she's in a female-female relationship, so it's really good. And the ending, oh my gosh, this book really raised the stakes for YA contemporary thrillers. The next YA contemporary book I read is This Poison Heart, and this book was a 4-star. This book is about the main character Bree, who has the ability to control plants, and plants also just kind of gravitate towards her. And she is moving into, she's adopted and she has 2 moms. She's her birth mom's sister, so her birth aunt is giving her her house, and once they move to the house, she starts to realize that the house has a secret apothecary in there. She has to like take care of it, and some other things go down. And this book also deals with a lot of Greek mythology. It talks about Medea a lot, who was the wife of Jason in the Golden Fleece, and it also talks about Hecate, and it's really focused on Greek mythology, which I really liked and I did not know going in. I really like this book, but I feel like the book didn't really get interesting until 60%. Like, it was interesting, but like there wasn't any like thing happening for like the first 60%. But I gave this book 4 stars because I ended up liking how it ended, and like it had a little plot twist in the end, and like I said, I liked how it talked about Greek mythology, and I just liked Bree. But a big issue I have with this book, and I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but I feel like sometimes with black books, a lot of them try to talk about black culture a lot to like to make their character relatable, but it becomes too much to a point where it seems like I don't like pop culture references, so it seems like pop culture references, but like black pop culture references, or not even that, like certain stuff that like black people experience, and like certain things that we say, certain like sayings that we have for certain moments. There's certain things like how you're like the main character was on the phone with her friend and she didn't take out the chicken, so she had to go like blow dry the chicken with the hair dryer, or like there's just like a lot of scenes like that, and I don't mind them, but it does become overbearing, and it felt like the author was trying to make the main character like prove that the main character was black, even though I don't know how to explain it, but it just got annoying after a while. And there was this one point in the book where a character said something and another character responded, and it was like a black culture response, but it didn't make sense in the context of the conversation, and that's when I really felt like, okay, the author is really just trying to put things in here. But like I said, it wasn't too much of a big deal to me. It was just something that like kind of got annoying, which is why I knocked it down to 5 stars, as well as the point that the book was pretty much nothing was really happening until like the 60% mark, but I liked what was happening in the end, and I didn't hate the book or anything like that. So I really enjoyed it, and this is a duology, and the second book's gonna come out next year, so I am actually really excited to check it out. The last book for my YA contemporary that I read is Hurricane Summer, and this book is just about this girl who goes to Jamaica to find out why her dad loves Jamaica more than he loves her and her sister. And it's a really heartbreaking story. It takes place during hurricane, and I like this book, but at the same time it was like really sad and depressing. And I mean, it's called Hurricane Summer and the description tells you that it's sad, but I kind of went into it hoping that like it didn't have a happy ending. Like something happened in the end that I just didn't really like, and it was just really sad, and the characters were like really mean to the main character because she wasn't Jamaican, and it was like the characters were just so mean, like all of them. Like there was only like maybe 2 characters that was nice to her. The main character would do dumb stuff that I didn't agree with, and I know she is a teenager, but it was just like really dumb. And also the main character is like exploring sexuality and things like that. A lot of things that happened in this book I just did not like. I wish it was a bit more happier, but I understand it, and I really love the cover, and the author plays one of the characters in Josie and the Pussycats and Riverdale, so that's why I had to buy it, to support the author. And I just absolutely love the cover. Like it's just so beautiful. But I guess I kind of just wanted the story to be a bit more happier. I was literally up at 6 a.m. crying while reading this book, and that's not something I wanted. So it was 3 stars, but a lot of people did really like it, so I still highly recommend it. Obviously I bought the book physically. I liked it so much. So next we have YA fantasy, which I don't own any of the YA fantasy books that I've read. So I read Spin the Dawn, which I gave 3 stars, and this one is basically a Mulan meets Project Runway. And if you guys didn't know, ever since I was 7, I have wanted to be a fashion designer. I started sewing at 9, and I was drawing my own clothes at like 13, and then I kind of gave up on that dream. But I still love fashion, as you guys can see by my videos. Like I love dressing up, I love styling like my mom and like myself, and just clothes in general. So I was so excited going into this book because I love fashion and like Project Runway. And Spin the Dawn is basically about this girl who, in this world, only men can make clothes, and like I really thought that was interesting, that only men could make clothes, and that women are just not supposed to make clothes. And so the main characters, all of her brothers end up like dying in this war, and one of her brothers is alive, but he like broke his legs. And then her dad is just so depressed from like him losing all of his sons, and like the only son he has his legs gone. So then like I think like the king's people come in, and they're like, we need somebody to come be in this thing for this king, and the dad can't do it. But the people are like, well, if you don't do it, then you're gonna like go to jail or something like that. So the main character's like, okay, I'll do it. So she ends up cutting her hair because she looks like her brother dad is still alive. She ends up cutting her hair. She goes to insert this contest to become the king's, or was it the queen's, like stylist basically, or to make their clothes. And she ends up coming across these magic scissors, and it's also like people like backstabbing her and backstabbing each other. And I thought it was really interesting. I just felt like the book should have ended, I guess it didn't, the whole book didn't take place as the contest. Like the contest ended up ending like, I want to say like 50%, 60% into the book. So the last like few pages, the last few chapters, or like the last few like 100 pages of the book just had to do nothing with the contest, and like it had other stuff to do. And I just like, at that point I wasn't really feeling the story anymore. If it just left off at the contest, I would have probably given the book like 4 or 5 stars. But because of the whole like after the contest, I wasn't really interested. But there is a sequel, and Six Crimson Cranes is set in the same world as this, and I think the world is really interesting. It just wasn't a lot of magic in this world, so I really hope that Six Crimson Cranes has magic, and I want to read the sequel at some point. I read The Shadow Queen, which I also gave 3 stars, and this one has been on my list since I joined BookTube. Like this is one of the first books I joined when I joined BookTube. I actually owned the book at one point, but I ended up getting rid of it because I was like, okay, I'm never gonna read this. I actually got rid of that book years ago. I've been on BookTube for a minute. Finally read it because I was like, okay, let me give this book a try. It's been on my TBR for the longest. So I finally read this book, and it's basically a Snow White retelling, which is, I've been begging for, and this book is old, so it's only my fault for not reading it, but like I've been searching for like retellings that aren't Beauty and the Beast. And so I read this one, and this one was like okay. It was about this girl, Snow White, who you know, it's a fairy tale retelling. So the queen tries to kill her. She ends up getting taken off to the side. It doesn't have the 7 doors, which already was 1 less star. Literally the missed opportunity to have a found family trope already. Then the guard who helps them escape, because she tries to kill her dad, and the brother and the sister get away. Snow White and her brother get away. So the guard ends up like becoming their parent and like training them, and it's basically so she can like fight the queen for her power, because everyone thinks she's dead. And then there's also a prince who turns into a dragon, which I love the prince. Their romance was okay, but like I love the prince, and like he's like a little monster boyfriend. Like he turned into a dragon. There's one point in the book where he was stuck in the dragon's body, and the queen like took over his mind. She didn't take over his mind, but she basically said your only job is to kill the princess. And it was like he had to fight it where she could like read his mind. I really like the romance was okay, but the book itself was just you know. I do want to continue on with the series because it is other retellings. Like they have Rumpelstiltskin and the Traitor Prince, which I do not know. I've literally never heard of that fairy tale before. But so the next book I have is In Deeper Waters, which I gave 4 stars, and this one was, oh, before I finish, I read 10 queer books. So some of these queer books are like male female, or things that like the characters in the book are queer, or sometimes like people in that world are really queer. So just in case I don't mention that, I did read 10 queer books, and I do have a thread on the books that were queer if you want to know more about that, just in case I do forget, because I have a lot of books to talk about. But In Deeper Waters is male, and it's a Pirates of the Caribbean retelling, which well, not retelling, but it's Pirates of the Caribbean inspired. And I've never seen Pirates of the Caribbean, but I will tell you right now, it is nothing like it. And you're probably like, girl, how would you know you didn't see the movie? But it's because a lot of people went into this book, including myself, went into this book thinking that the book was going to be about like the main character is going to fall in love with the pirate, or the main character was a pirate and is going to fall in love with another character. Neither happens. The one character ends up being kidnapped, and the main character and his older brother end up fighting him, and they end up like taking care of him. But the kid is like so stubborn, and the main character has like magic and special magic, and the main character ends up getting kidnapped after the other guy got kidnapped. They have like this really interesting love story, and it is magical. Like I said, the main character has a magic, and it was really good. I really liked it. It was a fantasy world, and I really liked that it was like a standalone. It was like a really good, quick and easy like standalone book, a fantasy standalone book, and I personally had fun while reading it. And I really loved the main character and the love interest, and I love them together. I thought that the main character, I cannot remember his name, but he was so sweet, and like he had some brothers and an older sister who was going to be queen, and like the story was like a well developed for a standalone fantasy book. Like if it had like more books in it, I wouldn't be mad, because I want to know more about the pirates. But that's just me, because the pirates were female, which I also liked. So there's a lot of things about this book that I really enjoyed. And then the next book I read was Two Princes of Summer, which is a reread for me. And I was rereading this book because I want to read the second book. I really didn't have to read this book. I should just jump to the second book, because I remember this book very clearly, and I had read this book like some years ago. But it's basically about two princes who are fighting over this girl. It's a love triangle book, and the main character ends up having dreams about one of the princes, and she ends up, I forgot how, but she ends up in their fantasy world with him. And it's a love triangle between the two princes, and the other prince is the prince's best friend, but they grew up as brothers because his parents died, so they're both fighting for the throne. And I really like this because neither is good nor is neither evil. Like the prince who is in the girl's dreams, like he comes off as good at first, but then you're like, oh, this man's kind of evil. And then the other prince is kind of evil, but then he does good things. So I really liked it because this book, you don't know who she's gonna get with, and you don't really know who to root for. Towards the end, I kind of rooted for the best friend slash brother, but that's because I kind of like him a bit more. But also, I don't know, and the covers are really pretty, and the author made these cover herself. And then I read Hitler, which I was so surprised by. This is like one of my biggest surprises of the year. Like, I give this book 4 stars. This book is about this girl who lives in this prison, and she's a prison healer. Her family was taken into prison at 7, and her parents, like her family ends up dying, I believe, but she ends up becoming the prison healer because her dad was a prison healer, so she learned a lot from him. And she's becoming a prison healer, and there's this person who ends up coming into the prison, and it's a queen, and she's like the rebel queen, and she has to do these trials because she's like set to be evil, and she has to do these trials to, if you get through the trials of like water, fire, wind, air. Wind and air are the same thing. Water, fire, earth. Yeah, those. Then you're like, if you get through all of those, then you're innocent. And so she has to get through all of those, but she's sick, so the prison healer is taking care of her and trying to get her back together. But she's like, yeah, I can't get her back together in like the amount of days, so I'm just gonna do it. I volunteer as tribute. She takes the responsibility to go through these trials, and I didn't think that the book would be interesting because it's set in a prison the entire time, and most fantasy books are. But I like that in this book the entire book took place in the prison, and they didn't do like a prison break kind of thing, or like not half of it wasn't like, I don't know, I just like that the book said it took place in this prison and it took place in the prison. And I ended up really liking the main character. Well, I ended up liking the characters. It has like a found family trope, and one of my favorite characters is, I think her name is Nari, and she's a guard, and I really like her. And I can't wait for the second book. The second book comes out in October. The first book came out in April. She's in her romance author era, but I cannot wait for the second book. I really, really love this, and I hope that the second book doesn't disappoint me, because like I just barely like this book, but like I'm thinking of actually giving it a 5 stars because I cannot stop thinking about it. But the beginning of the book was pretty boring, but I like the story. Like I like the fantasy world, and I like that like the book takes place, there's no, I like that the book, like in the book there's no fantasy stuff, like nobody has any magic. The ending was predictable, but I still ended up liking it. So Thrice 6 Venom, which I ended up giving it 5 stars. This is a bully romance about 2 girls who are on the, I want to say lacrosse team, but no, they're on a sports team like soccer, like somewhere you gotta be outside, okay? Volleyball, no, they're on like a sports team, and the main character, there's Clay and Olivia. One of them was like a rich girl. They were giving me and Cheryl. So it was like the super rich popular one, and then the one who was like poor, and she is in this game called Thrice 6, which I really hope we get a book about her brothers because I am in love with them. And I thought this book was really, really fun. I gave it 5 stars. I mean, Penelope doesn't disappoint, of course. Like, what did you do? And the next book I read was One Last Stop, which is also female, which I gave 3 stars. And I gave it 3 stars because the main character really annoyed me. Like, I could not stand her. If you don't know what this book is about, this book is about this girl moving to a new place in New York, and she's taking this train, and she notices that this girl in this train is there every time she gets on one. So she starts to become friends with her, and you end up finding out that the girl is stuck in like the 90s, I think, and they end up like falling in love. And it was okay. Like I said, the main character was like really, really annoying, but it had like a found family trope, which I did enjoy. But the main character just ruined it for me. Like, she was so annoying. Such an annoying character to read from. I really wish we read from Jane's perspective because I liked her a lot more. And I would have liked to see like how she was like stuck in like the 90s and like how she thought, and just like the book from her perspective. I think I would have liked a little bit more. And I read Fear Me, which I gave 3 stars, and this one was by Mimi Reed. This one is a bully romance book, and this is about this girl. Okay, so her bully ends up in jail, and he thinks it's her fault. So when he gets out, he's basically like gunning after her. So the book is very questionable, but it was okay. It had a found family trope, which I liked, but overall it was okay. So the next book I read was Flock and Exodus. So the first 2 books in the Flock series, which are only 3 books. I'm not even gonna read the 3rd book. So the first book's okay. I think what happened was I went into it with such high expectations because it was so overhyped. Like, TikTok was hyping it up. Jocelyn was telling me to read it before it got hyped up on TikTok, and I remember Chandler from Chandler Ainsley ended up like really recommended it, and then Jocelyn read it and was like, oh my gosh, man, you will like this. And I was like, okay, I'll get into it. And it got popular on TikTok, and I was like, but I still read it now because I was like, okay, like, let me just get this book off my list. And I read it, and it was okay. It's basically about this girl who moves to this new town, and she ends up getting involved with this guy, and he has this friend that he lives with that is just like, so like, he's like a bad boy or whatever. And there's also some other things going on that are introduced into this book, like secret societies and stuff like that. And I liked the book. The ending made me cry, but I did not like the guy she wasn't with the bad boy. She was with this other guy, and I did not like him. I thought he was boring. I thought he was annoying. He always spoke in like riddles, and it was so annoying. And I read the second book and I didn't care for it. It did follow another love interest, which I did like him, but the books just did not end how I wanted them to, basically. So it was just like, it was okay. It wasn't bad though, but I think I just went in like expecting a little bit more than I should have. And then I read Brutal Prince and Stolen Heir, which is like the Brutal something series, and I gave them both 4 stars. This is a mafia book. Brutal Prince is about this girl. It's a marriage convenience trope. It is about this girl who ends up like going to this house for this party, and she like sets something on fire. She didn't set the house on fire, something on fire, and she stole a watch. So she goes back home, whatever, and the guy is like, yo, you stole my watch, and they started getting in this fight. And then the next day the dads, because one is an Italian mafia and the other is the Irish mafia, so they're like, okay, we've had this battle for too long, like we need to settle things down. So they marry off the two people that, you know, were in that fight. And mafia books always do this, but I personally thought this was like the most interesting of the mafia books because she fought back. Because I read another mafia book last year and they were okay, and then one of the characters did fight back in the second book, I think. But like, I don't like how, like, if you don't like this, they're like, I get that it's like they don't have no choice, but the main character did things like she ate strawberries before their wedding, before their like the wedding part, because he's allergic to strawberries. So when she kissed him, she ended up putting him in the hospital. Like doing little stuff like that. Like I personally really like that, and I really like the main character. I thought she was so funny. Ooh, so this is like one of the different like mafia books I read. And then the second one is following the male character's sister, so the Irish family, and then another mafia. And this guy, his dad was killed and his sister was brutally raped, and she ended up killing herself. So to seek revenge, he ends up like, well, he ends up seeking revenge on everybody that is involved. And so he ends up kidnapping the guy's sister because the Irish mafia was involved somehow. And so he kidnaps her, and she does like ballet, and she like is staying in his house, and she has nowhere to go, and they end up falling in love. And I really like that one too. I gave it 4 stars. The Initiation, The Obsession, The Deception, and The Redemption, I gave the first book 4 stars, second book 4.5, third book 3 stars, and the fourth book 3 stars. So this book is about this girl who is a marriage convenience book, and she's getting married off into this guy, and she like meets him at a party or whatever. He like, it's kind of like a Great Gatsby thing where he throws a party, and then she's like reading her book because she's so different. Walks in, they're like talking, and like they spark this romance, and then she ends up having to marry him. The book was good, and the book is more than what you seem. I personally did not like the love interest in this book, but it's not the same. It's a spoiler, but it's not the same love interest as in the second book. The book is more than what you seem as you get to the end. And then the second book was really good. The series ends on the third book, and there's like a spin-off. So the Redemption is the first book in the spin-off. I did not like how the series ends, which is why I gave it 3 stars, because I wanted her to end up with someone else. And then the fourth book follows that person I wanted her to end up with. But I didn't like reading from his perspective, and I didn't like his romance with the other person. Like, I think the author caught on to people like not liking the love interest in the first book, so then she tried to like give them a relationship, and like she tried to give him a relationship, but like a lot of people liked it. I personally just did not care for it. So now we get to new adult fantasy, which I read A Touch of Darkness, which is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I did not really like this. It felt like a ripoff of Lore Olympus, I'm not gonna lie. Like it had like a lot of the same. So the next book I read was The Bridge Kingdom and The Traitor Queen, which I gave both 4.5 out of 5 stars. The Bridge Kingdom is about this girl who ends up being sent off to marry. Okay, it's about this girl, and she poisons all of her sisters. She has like, I think she has 12 siblings, and she ends up poisoning all of her sisters because she knows that her father is basically going to like make them like fight each other, and they're all gonna have to die anyway. So she kills them off to save them, and her father ends up marrying her off to these king in another country that's like their rival country, to like make a truce between the both of them. And she is supposed to be like a spy for her father, but she actually ends up falling in love with him. And I really like this book because I love the main character. Her name is Laura, and she reminds me of like Jude Duarte, like Elle from The Daily Education. Like, she just reminds me of like a actual like bad bitch character, and like an actual one. Laura, I love Laura because she was always trying to poison somebody. She is swifty with that hand. Y'all gotta look out for her, okay? I love Laura. One thing I didn't like was I didn't really care about the romance all too much, but I loved Laura. I love the fantasy world, so I didn't mind. And then The Traitor Queen follows that, and I really liked it up until, I want to say around like 70%. I start to get bored because it dragged on a little bit, but I thought the ending was good, and it's going to be a 5-book series. Zodiac Academy, which I gave 3 stars. This book is basically about these 2 twins, and they're supposed to be like the Gemini symbol, and they're twins, and they end up, this guy who like is like the principal to the Zodiac school ends up fighting him, and he's like, yeah, y'all are like secretly powerful, like come with me. They're like, okay, we ain't got nothing to lose, because they're like literally have to like steal. And They end up finding out that they're princesses to like this world that they never knew of, and there's these things called fae. Not fairies. Fae is just like another word for paranormal creatures. So there's vampires, werewolves, medusas, like stuff like that. I thought this book was like a bit too much because you had fantasy trying to mix in bully romance, trying to mix in zodiacs, and it was like too much going on at once. Now we move on to adult contemporary, and I read Bunny. This was my book club pick for June, which we talked about on my live stream for my Dark Academia book club, and this one I ended up giving 3 stars. Everyone says it's best if you go into this book not really knowing what's going on, so I'll just give you like a brief description. This book is about this main character named Sam who ends up being involved with the bunnies, and there are these weird girls who grow around calling each other Bunny. She ends up becoming involved with them. I thought it was okay. I think that this book had a lot of things like weren't explained that in this book, because it does have like a supernatural plot line to it. In this book it needed to be touched on because it was so supernatural, and that's pretty much it. Like, I don't mind when things aren't explained, but if you're going to put supernatural into it, you have got to explain some things. And it's called a dark comedy, but I didn't find anything really funny. The next book I read was Lovers, and this one was a male female book, and I ended up giving this book 3 stars. This one is about this guy who's getting married to his fiance, and his college friend is coming along to bring back college memories, things they used to do when they were like teens. He ends up sparking up a romance with like his college friend, and it's supposed to be like a male female book, but it's really like the guys are more interested in each other than all of them. And I went in wanting a poly book, and I just got in like I ended up getting a cheating book, which I don't like cheating, and I couldn't help but feel bad for the main character the entire time. So I ended up just giving this 3 stars. And then I also read The Heart Principle, which was an arc, and I got this book 3 stars because this book is the 3rd book in the Kiss Potion trilogy, and it was very sad, very depressing. It did not read like the other 2 books in the series. It felt like, I buddy read this one with Miriam from Miriam Reads sometimes, and she felt the same way as me, and it just read like a different book in a series. And I know the author took inspiration for her life, but like Quan didn't seem the same because this was Quan's book, and he just didn't seem the same, and it just wasn't what I expected, and it was just like so depressing. And I already was depressed from another book I had just read. And then I read Lilac by BB Reed, which I gave 5 stars to. Oh my gosh, I love this book. This book was about one of the members in this band ends up dying, so the girl ends up becoming the guitarist, and they don't like her. And it's a poly book. It's like and it also has like male. It's male female. This one was like the guys, there are 2 guys in the story who had like their own little romance, which it like was very slow burn, but I like that. And then there's one guy who's just interested in her, and they all end up like with her. But I really like this. It was like so long. It was like 500 pages. I read it all in one night. Literally did not, I waited until it got dark outside, did not move a single muscle. Like, it was so good. I love the main character, I love the romance, the smut was good, like it was good. And then I also read Beach Read, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really love this book. I read People We Meet on Vacation last month, so I decided to just read this one so I can have all of her books read, so when her newest book comes out I'll be all caught up. This book, if you don't know what Beach Read is about, where have you been? It is about this girl, her dad ends up dying, and he gives her this beach house, and well, she's going to clean out the beach house so she can sell it. And she writes books, she writes chick lit, but everyone always says it's romance even though it's chick lit, because once she gets to the beach house, she ends up realizing that her neighbor is her college rival, also writes stories. And when they first meet, he ends up pretending that he doesn't know her, so she plays along, and then at some point they end up stop playing around, and then they end up deciding that they were going to write each other's genres for them. Everyone said this book was sad and that they cried in the end, or they're not crying in the end. I don't know, I thought that somebody was gonna die in the end. I read Sweet Hand, which I had to get before I did my wrap up, because y'all had to see this cover in person. Like, this wasn't gonna be like a little insert picture here. Y'all have to see this, you have to see it in person. So this book is a romance book, obviously, and it is about the main character who ends up breaking up with her boyfriend, and she likes to bake sweets. And there's the main guy character who is a DJ, and they end up having to be together, work together, well, be around each other, forced proximity. I'm adding another word here, forced proximity, because their mutual friend is getting married, and they don't like each other. but they end up like getting involved. And I love this book because he's bi. So this is another queer book I read for this month. He's bi, and I loved him because like he cried, he showed his feelings, and I just love when authors write black boys to show their emotions. And then we also have For Vacation Only, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars as well. And this book is a friends to lovers book about this guy who ends up getting dumped at his wedding, and he goes on this cruise, and when he gets to the cruise, he meets a main character who is a singer on the cruise who also just got dumped. She decides to give him a tour around the places that they stopped for their cruise, and the book was really cute, and I love the friends to lovers. I thought it was fun. I also read Push, which is another male female book. I got recommended this book by one of my friends who I actually became close with recently. Her name is Tanya, and her TikTok, Bookstagram, and Twitter is Baby Girl Reddit. She reads a lot of like the same romance books as me. I ended up reading Push because of her, and she recommended it to me because we were talking about lovers, and I was saying how I didn't like the cheating trope. So she recommended me Push, where it's about this guy who has a daughter, and his daughter is coming back from college, and he is like a very overprotective father, and his daughter brings home a boyfriend, and the wife is like, okay, like make sure you calm down or whatever. And he does not like the boyfriend. The boyfriend is like sweet, so he doesn't have a reason to not like him. So he realizes that he actually is falling in love with him, and the wife ends up getting involved at one point. And I gave this book 3 stars. The smut was really good, but the writing was really corny. Like some of the lines they said was really corny, and then like I feel like the way the author had the father speak when he spoke to the daughter was just so corny. And like I guess he was like in his 30s, but the way that they talked, and sometimes even in the smut, dirty talk was so weak. The smut itself was really good. For fantasy, I read a Jen and Caro, which I gave no rating to because this was a novella for Master Jen. So this one is it's set in Egypt 1902, I think, or it's set in like Egypt at an older time, and it's a murder mystery basically, and it's a novella. It was really short, so I couldn't really rate it because I had nothing to rate it based off of. And then I also read The Mask of Mirrors, which I ended up giving 3 stars. This one is another queer book I read for the month, and this was where like the world more so focused on queer characters, and that was more normal. It's basically about this girl who is a con artist, and she's trying to con her way into like one of the top houses, and she actually ends up kind of conning her way pretty good, and she ends up pretending to be the daughter of someone who recently died. And I thought it was pretty interesting. It followed a lot of characters. I just thought that it was boring. I did like the magic system. Like one of the magic systems was based off like tarot cards, and like I really did think that was interesting. That was like really unique. I've never read anything like that before. But the story itself was just so boring. It was like 600 pages, and it did not need to be 600 pages. Like, oh my gosh. I don't know if I'll read the sequel or not because I did like the main character, but I also read For the Wolf, which I gave 3 stars, and this is Red Riding Hood retelling, and it's about the first daughter. The first daughter takes the throne, and the second daughter is for the wolf. So the main character is the second daughter. She's the second daughter, so she's sent to go live with the wolf in the woods as like a sacrifice kind of thing. I didn't really like it. I didn't hate it, but it just wasn't what I thought it would be. I had such high expectations for it. I thought that really boring, and then on top of that, it was just like very insta love, and I didn't think it needed to be enemies to lovers or anything, but they had like no, it just wasn't that. It just was insta love. Like that's literally what it was. And I liked the wolf. I just wanted more, I guess. I wanted more from like the romance. And then I have Son of the Storm, which is basically about this guy who's kind of special. He's not treated as special. They kind of treat him like everyone else. They're kind of harder on him than everyone else, low-key, because they think he's like a menace, basically. And there's this book. You're not supposed to like take notes or write anything about the book that he found, and then he didn't. He got caught, and then the book is actually stolen again, so he's a suspect for it. And there are these people called the Yellow Skins, which they are viewed as evil, and he actually ends up, a yellow skin actually ends up getting into like their area, and he actually ends up running to that yellow skin and realizing that his life isn't what he thought it was, and his people basically lied to him, and he ends up going on the run with this yellow skin and one of his friends. And I just thought this book was okay. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't like amazing, but it wasn't terrible. So I mean, then I have 4 thrillers. So one of the thrillers I read this month was All's Well by Mona Awad, who also wrote Bunny, and I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. This one was basically about this director who wants to do, for a college, who wants to do the play All's Well Ends Well by Shakespeare, but her like cast doesn't want to do that. They want to do Macbeth, which is a cursed play, so I don't know why they want to do that. But the director doesn't believe it's a cursed place, so I don't know why she doesn't do it. Well, it's explain why, but she just whatever. And she has like this chronic back pain to the point where like nobody believes her, and her cast ends up going behind her back to do this play, and then 3 men come into her life and they give her the opportunity to switch the roles basically. And I just did not think this was good. It was called a dark comedy, but it made me so depressed. Nothing wasn't shit funny. Like, I did not like it. Now, since we're on the topic of 2 stars, the other black girl, which also was a 2-star book, and this one isn't even really a thriller, but it's marketed as a thriller, so whatever. But it's Get Out meets The Devil Wears Prada, which don't go into this book and you're gonna get like some cutesy drama. You're gonna get microaggressions, you're gonna get racism. Yeah, so basically it's about this main character who is the only black girl in this publishing office, and another black girl ends up coming up. But as soon as she comes up, the main character ends up getting notes like leave here now, and her coworkers start treating her very differently, and her life is just basically turned upside down. And I did not like this book because I thought the main character was a coon. The main character did not feel black enough, and you very much could tell that she still did not feel black enough ever, and that she was very intimidated by the other character, Hazel. The main character's name is Nella. She didn't have black friends because she had all accelerated classes, and none of her black friends were in those classes, so that's why she never had black friends. Okay, I'm like sweating my ass off at this point. So I was talking about the other black girls, and yeah, I just didn't like this book. I have a lot of things I want to touch on. I didn't really like the ending, and I watched this movie called Bad Hair, which one of my favorite horror movies right now, is set to look like it was filmed and made in like set in the 80s, and it was a really good movie. And this book kind of reminded me of that movie, but it didn't take the ways that the movie took, and I really would have liked the book a lot more if it went in a route where I can't really talk much about it without giving spoilers. So that's the most in-depth I had to say. I also read 2 Karen Slaughter books. I read Pretty Girls and The Good Daughter. Pretty Girls is the one I read first, and this one is about this girl who goes missing, and then a few years later the husband dies, and it opens up a subject of like other things, and there's a huge plot twist in this book, which plot twist happens like there's like 100 pages left in the book. So I ended up giving this like 4.5 out of 5 stars, I think, because the ending of the book wasn't as strong as the rest of the book. It was like really gory. I love gore. This one was really gory, like really. And then this one is The Good Daughter, and this follows 2 sisters where one day they was involved in a home invasion, and they were taken out to the woods, and one sister was shot in the head while the other ran, and you just follow the one that's the good daughter when a bunch of things start happening again in this town, and it brings up the old memory of what happened. And I like both of these books, and I cannot wait to read the next Karen Slaughter book, which I have an arc of, which is False Witness. And then I read one classic this month, and I read 12th Night, and this one is obviously Shakespeare, and basically She's the Man is 12th Night basically. So it was really easy for me to read this. Well, it's easy for me to read Shakespeare with these volumes anyways, but it was easy for me to read these books while like picturing the characters from She's the Man. I also have this Shakespeare book. Which I read along with it, and this book tells you like what happens in each act. And so I'll read this, and then I'll go into each act, and it lets me know like what happened in it, and it makes it just a lot easier to read it. And I think I gave this one 4 stars. I had a lot of fun reading 12th Night, and I can see why they adapted She's the Man from it, because it was really good. So now we're gonna move on to sci-fi, and I read 2. I always got something sticky on my damn floor. I read 2 sci-fi books. So I read Supernova Era, and I read 2 of these authors' other books in the series, which this one is about this star that dies, and like this dust, and it's killing off everyone over the age of 13. So the parents are teaching the kids under the age of 13 like how to survive in the world, like what to do and all this stuff. And it follows them like teaching the kids and everything, and then it follows them dying, and like the kids, like something happens and like the kids can't figure out how to fix it or anything like that, and the kids just want to like have like ice cream day, and they want to build a roller coaster that goes into the ground, and they want to like they have to like go to work and then go to school, and they don't have any time to like have fun, and like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. And it reminds me of like the episode of Very Odd Parents when Timmy wished away the parents, or the episode of The Proud Family when like all the parents disappeared. And I just love those episodes as TV shows as a kid, so getting to read that, this was like really fun. And it has like, I really like that the author took a science approach to this. And the last book I read is Want by Cindy Pon, and this one kind of reminds me of Blade Runner, the sequel. I forget which year, it's like whatever, but it reminds me of Blade Runner. It's set in this world where like everyone is like, if you're rich you basically get like, you know, typical, very realistic, if you're rich you get better privileges. Like if there's a virus going around, you'll get like this special shield to like help you, and the people in this town actually get like fed up with it. He wants to destroy this corporation that destroys everyone else's life. And so yeah, I thought this was like 3 stars. Second book, but one of the characters in this book is queer, and I thought the book was like just okay. I just like kind of expected more from it, but it's like really short, so like what could I expect from it? But I don't think I'll be moving on with the sequel, but I did like this book. I'm just lazy and it's hot. That's it for this video. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.